Assalamu alaikum. Welcome all to Easy Human Anatomy channel. This is another podcast, Brain and Eyeball Card, Item 2, the topics meninges. The membrane of the brain. The three membranes surround the spinal cord, the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater, are continuous upward as covering to the brain. Dura is a dense membrane which, within the cranium, is made up of two layers. The outer layer is ultimately adhered to the skull. The inner layer is united to the outer layer except where separated by great dural venous sinuses, and where it projects to form four sheaths: the fox cerebri, fox cerebelli, tentorium cerebelli, diaphragma celli. Arachnoid mater is a delicate net-like membrane separate from the dura by a potential subdural space, is project only into the longitudinal fissure and the stem of the lateral fissure. Pia mater invests the brain and spinal cord as periosteum invests bone. Like periosteum, it contains blood vessel. It closely invests the surface of the central nervous system to the depth of deepest fissure and sulcus. It is made of thin vascular fibrous tissue and can be stripped away from the brain surface. It is prolonged out over the cranial nerves and spinal nerve root to fuse with their epineurium. It is invested into the substance of the brain by the entering cerebral artery. The artery lie loose in their sheath of pia, surrounded by a narrow perivascular space containing CSF. The region between pia and arachnoid is the subarachnoid space filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Now, question and answer. The anatomical points of cranial dura mater. There is a viscera of the cranial dura mater, and following are the anatomical points. The superior surface of cranial dura is convex and directed upward. The processes of cranial dura is directed inferiorly, and tentorium cerebelli is laid transversely on the posterior part. What do you mean by the meninges? It is the covering of brain and spinal cord. What are the layer of cranial dura mater? Endosteal dura, meningeal dura. What is the function of meninges? It protects brain and spinal cord, and it acts as a shock absorber, protect the cranial vessel from injury. What is leptomeninges? Arachnoid and pia mater are together known as the leptomeninges. Which layer of the dura mater is continuous with periosteum? Endosteal layer of dura mater. What is epidural space of vertebral canal? Tell its content. The space between dura mater and wall of the vertebral canal is known as the epidural space. It contains fat, internal vena, vertebral venous plexus, and spinal nerve root. Is there any space between dura and arachnoid mater? Yes, subarachnoid space. Content of the subarachnoid space: CSF, long blood vessel of the brain, cranial nerves passing through the space. Tell the extension of the subarachnoid space. It extends up to the lower border of the second sacral vertebra. What do you mean by the formation of arachnoid granulation? With the advanced age, the arachnoid villi enlarge in size to form pedunculated tuft called arachnoid granulation. What is pyometer? It is a thin vascular membrane which closely invests brain, dipping into various sulci and other irregularities of the surface. What is stella choroidae? The fold of pyometer enclosing the choroid plexus are called the stella choroidae. Tell the situation and content of the cisterna magna or cisterna interpedungularis. Situated at the base of the brain, containing the circle of Willis. Next question, what are the processes of meningeal layer of dura mater? Fox cerebri project between the two cerebral hemispheres. Fox cerebrally project between two cerebellar hemispheres. Tentorium cerebelli project between occipital lobe of the cerebrum and superior surface of the cerebellum. Diaphragma celli, it lies on the roof of the sella turcica. Cavum trigeminale, in it lies the trigeminal ganglion. Which structures lies in the diaphragma celli? Hypophysis cerebri. Name the sinuses present at the free and attached border of the fox cerebri, fox cerebelli and tentorium cerebelli. Fox cerebri. Free margin, inferior sagittal sinus, attached margin, superior sagittal sinus. Tentorium cerebelli, in median plane along the attachment of the fox cerebri, straight sinus. Attached margin, transverse sinus, sigmoid sinus, superior petrosal sinus. Fox cerebelli. Free margin, no sinus is present. Attached margin, occipital sinus. Tell the function of tentorium cerebelli, fox cerebelli and fox cerebri. It prevents acceleration of the brain in the cranial cavity during sudden movement of the head and thus help in stabilizing the brain in the cranial cavity. Nerve supply of the dura mater. By all three divisions of the trigeminal nerve, vagus, sympathetic nerve, and upper three cervical nerve. Now, the artery supply of the dura mater, meningeal branch of middle meningeal artery, which is the arrest from the maxillary artery, accessory meningeal artery, anterior posterior ethmoidal artery, internal carotid artery, occipital, vertebral, lacrimal, ascending pharyngeal artery. What are the peculiarity of the venous sinuses? Wall is formed by the dura mater. Inner lining is endothelium, no muscle in the wall. There is no valve and it contains deoxygenated blood and CSF. And it is a special type of vein. Tell about cavernous sinus. Location, it lies in the median cranial fossa on each side of the body of the sphenoid bone. Boundary, floor is formed by the endosteal dura mater. Lateral wall, roof and medial wall is formed by the dura mater. They communicate with each other through anterior-posterior intercavernous sinus. It is 2 cm long and 1 cm wide. The structure lies within it. Through the center, two structure is passes internal carotid artery, abducens nerve. From lateral wall above downward, 4 nerves are present: oculomotor nerve, trochlear nerve, ophthalmic nerve, and maxillary nerve. The tributaries of the cavernous sinus is very important. The superior inferior ophthalmic vein, superficial middle inferior cerebral vein, sphenoparietal sinus. It communicates pterygoid plexus of vein through emissary vein, internal jugular vein through inferior petrosal sinus, transverse sinus through superior petrosal vein, facial vein through ophthalmic vein. Tell about superior sagittal sinus. It's begin at cystogaly and end by the becoming continuous as transverse sinus. Tell about transverse sinus. Right transverse sinus is continuous with superior sagittal sinus and left one with straight sinus. The right sinus is usually larger. It ends by becoming continuous as sigmoid sinus and its end into the superior bulb of the internal jugular vein. Name the artery of the extradural hemorrhage. Middle cerebral artery, the branch of first part of the maxillary artery. Tell me about the formation and termination of the straight sinus. It is formed by the union of inferior sagittal sinus with great cerebral vein. It drains into the left transverse sinus. Name the artery affected in subarachnoid hemorrhage. It is usually arterial due to the rupture of small aneurysm affecting the branches of internal carotid or vertebral artery. Why subdural hemorrhage is mostly venous? The subdural hemorrhage is mostly venous due to tearing of the some cerebral vein on their way to termination into the dural venous sinuses as a result of shearing force of the head injury. What is extradural hemorrhage? Usually associated with fracture of the skull bone. Extradural hemorrhage take place due to the rupture of the meningeal vessel, and this is usually associated with the fracture of the skull bone. Tell me the location of the choroid plexus, lateral ventricle, third ventricle, roof of the fourth ventricle. What do you mean by the choroid plexus cyst? They are fluid-filled cysts, may be formed during fetal development at the second trimester. Usually, it disappears. So this is all about meninges. If you like this podcast, please share it and please subscribe my channel, and thank you for watching.